So we have had a little bit of a tickle of an all-time high breakout with Bitcoin. Now everyone's arguing amongst themselves, are we topping or what? Because right now we are sitting on a key level that could potentially decide everything. And even though we have went higher, the situation is, on the drawdown, it's looking pretty good. Before I break down what I see in the charts, I want to know in the comments, do you think we want to hold or are we going to break lower? Let me know in the comments. Now for context, throughout this video, we're going to talk about speculation and we are playing with the game of probability here. Since our breakout, we have had a little 3% pullback, give or take. And I think it's not really panic worthy. I mean, I've been in many bull cycles and the corrections in this one have not been that bad at all. But you obviously get a breakout, you get leverage piling in, and always the first person through the door gets slaughtered, so to speak. So it is a bit brutal if you are playing with high leverage, of course. But the question is, where do we go from here? Is it a sign of exhaustion or is it a sign of a clear breakout, which we do go higher from eventually? We are on the chart, and this is the Bitcoin chart. If you are wondering what's happening next, well, you don't have to look too far because that weekly time frame is a beauty. It's a big candle, and yes, you can see we have a new all-time high here. Woohoo! And I think we are on our merry way up to some of these levels and maybe even higher. This isn't looking too bad. You know, for me, I don't see anything that's remotely bearish here at the minute currently. We do have to go lower, and I do think that $116,000, $117,000 level around here is probably pretty important. Let me explain why that's important, because on a 12-hour time frame, that is where the key level is, where we have broken out from. So 117,000, keep it on your thoughts and your whatever. It looks all right, let's be honest. So I'm not overly that bothered. The reality is here, I do think a lot of people are a bit panicky, and I think Ethereum's doing all right. We could be looking at certain levels there going higher, and we are just pulling back, and it isn't a massive correction. Let's be honest, we're talking a couple of $1,000s, which is nothing in the Bitcoin scheme nowadays. So that's a huge factor. But yeah, you could argue a lot of things, but that isn't looking too bad at all. Everything is looking much better. We've even broken out in the RSI, which looks even better as well, which is getting rid of any potential divergences, which is pretty important. We have a high closure, we have a good RSI, we have, higher low structure intact, all that kind of good stuff. And yet people, in my viewpoint, are panicking like buggery. I'm not immune to the fact that we could go lower here. We can go back to that $117,000 level and retrace to that and active levels of support and see where we are. But currently, we've found a level of interest here, which, yeah, you could argue certain things. It's pretty good. It's nice to see. However, still very early. Just be mindful of that. Now, the one thing that I do need to talk about more, and we could talk about funding rates, we could talk about liquidations, we could talk about fear and greed and overall kind of, oh my God, panicky. But realistically, the corrections and stuff always, I would say always, but come from essentially leverage and just people getting blown up. I think there is a small trickle of retail coming back. I've noticed a couple of comments on my YouTube where people are saying nice things, and it's like, you've not been around for a while. No offense to anyone, but there's a lot of people looking back at videos. I've noticed my audience has slowly increased, and that was all due to the fact that Bitcoin broke an all-time high. People will return, but so will leverage. So will the sentiment around funding. So will the sentiment around the fear and greed. There's going to be certain situations where it's going to really hurt if we go too high and we aggressively pull back, if people are aping into it and charming in very, very quickly. But you've also got to look at the obvious in the room here, which is the inflows for the ETF has been parabolic, by the way. Just saying the obvious, and it has gone pretty crazy, and that has probably led to the fact of why we are at this point, which is mental in itself. Even the Ethereum one is looking a bit better, and we do need to look at the rotation map, risk on, risk off, where we're going to go, when do the altcoins move. Leave a like if you want altcoins to move. Be good to see how many people actually are still in altcoins. If we get over 300 plus likes, I know there's a lot of people begging for it, and I will do a video about that in more detail very, very soon. But if you do want more content, live streams, Discords, 4 videos a week and all that kind of good stuff, jump in Patreon. There's a very, very high chance FOMO season's going to be coming if we get a breakout of all-time high with Ethereum, because I think Ethereum holds the keys to it all for the retail in a way. Now, I've talked a lot about Bitcoin. I talk a lot about how I believe not many people have Bitcoin and totally miss the boat. Whether you are exposed in certain ecosystems, whether it is the Bitcoin ecosystem with runes or ordinals, whether you're exposed in the altcoins or startups or whatever, or something random in the Ethereum slash altcoin market, there has to be a period of liquidity that comes in and shoots it. Bitcoin dominance, for me, matters for two reasons. One, where's the money flow? Is Ethereum doing well? Is it doing bad? What's the stable currency dominance doing? All that kind of good stuff, right? Let's talk about it in more detail. Bitcoin dominance is still kind of wondering where to go. It's pulled back a little bit from a certain level. It's doing all right, but it isn't really got that clear, decisive move point yet, right? In my viewpoint on that. Whether we correct from here and go lower, whether we correct from the 618, which is literally 60.5%, or go lower, who knows? Some people are expecting higher. I don't think we're going to go much higher than that. I think realistically we're going to get a bounce on Ethereum. That's going to change the whole metric of it. Because when we do look at the likes of Ethereum here, we have bounced, we've pulled up, and we have corrected. Whether we do go higher or not, I don't know. But realistically, it will eventually move. Those ETF inflows are pretty important. It needs a base, it needs to start turning up. But ultimately, at the end of the day, any altcoin pump will get the awareness around everything. And that's kind of what happens. And realistically, that's where the crowd will come. We are starting to see now headlines about Bitcoin. When I say Ethereum gets beyond that point, we're going to see Ethereum headlines. And then that's going to probably pique more people's interest. For me, anyways, that's just kind of obvious. People will want that risk to reward. But even still, the fact that the stable currency dominance, for example, here is still in a situation where it doesn't really know where to go yet. I think we're going to go lower just due to the fact that the Bitcoin price is getting more and more mature and getting more and more pricey. Whether that means a big, massive drop down into these 5% levels or even lower is huge. But that's where we need to kind of somewhat go. If we go down here, you have to be taking some money out of the market because that basically means that we're pumped like buggery. Because usually that's what happens. But the question remains, and the horrible question for a lot of people is where and when and why, and what's going to make the altcoin market move. And I do think, as I said before, Ethereum, I don't know how high we're going to go. Are we going to get a move like the end of 2023 into 2024, which actually didn't really move this that much, which is mad. You see it a lot more in this chart, the other slash BTC, because a lot more lower elements around the market did push pretty well. But at the end of it, we are still technically in a buy zone for altcoins. Realistically, we're at the lows. Whether we go back up to this point here, who knows? Whether altcoin seasons are going to be the same again, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. By the way, link below, you can win all kinds of prizes, cool welcome bonuses, and not to mention 20% back on fees. Every time you do a trade, you will get some money back, which is pretty awesome. So you will spend less on fees and more for investments. Jump in, it's good. You also don't need KYC. So overall, my plan is pretty simple. There's a lot of people talk about Q4. I've talked about it quite a lot. And a lot of people are like, I'm going to sell no matter what, at whatever point on a set date, which is random. For me, it's all about how high and how priced in is Bitcoin. I will be taking profits as things go. I do a dollar cost average challenge on my Patreon, and I do talk about it on this channel every now and again. But I have stopped now my BTC investments into that because it's getting quite high. I'm going to just focus them on the altcoin ones because I do think there's going to be more risk to reward in altcoins in a short period of time. Because at the end of the day, the higher Bitcoin goes and if Ethereum runs off, you're going to see risk to reward on altcoins. You are. Whether that is, as I said before, same as 2021 or 2017, probably unlikely. But they will be a bounce at some point because there always is, realistically. And that's what happens. With Bitcoin, the plan is simple. We go up, we consolidate, altcoins run with it. Realistically, that's happened over the last year or so, and you've seen that kind of growth come back a little bit, not crazy, but enough for people to go, wow, look at the price of BNB, for example. Look at the price of what Ethereum is now versus a couple of months ago. XRP, for example, even the likes of Solana, right? They have matured a little bit, nothing crazy, but it will get better. You have to be selective. I still think the winners are the leaders with the obvious in the room of size, full dilution value, all that kind of good stuff, right? Because people trust them. You can see where the volume's going with the ETFs, for example. So yeah, when we see that USD dominance break down and we see the Ethereum.D or whatever go up a bit more, you're probably going to see a lot more rotation. And at the end of the day, right, gold is over $4,000 per ounce. What the hell? So, what if this liquidity flies into Bitcoin? It could really get sent. And that's a real possibility, by the way. It's not just me just making bollocks up. And if people do want to return back into other markets or just go for another thing, that's a lot of money that could get pumped somewhere. And it's really interesting to see how the behavior of this has changed. So yeah, we've still got all-time highs on the Nasdaq and the S&P 500, the Dow Jones are looking relatively good, the FTSE 100 is looking good, the Nikkei went up loads yesterday. It's pretty crazy. And then you've got gold. What the hell, like? And I know there's a government shutdown, and I wasn't expecting this sort of reaction with a government shutdown. I thought it would have been a bit more skittish, but actually it's gone the polar opposite way around. So yeah, Bitcoin's true level of real conviction is 117,000. If we get down to there and bounce, amazing. Even if we don't get anywhere near that and we just fly off and we carry on going, and even now as I speak, Bitcoin is slowly going up, and you may not see this video for a couple of hours by the time I edit and put it out. But at the end of the day, things are looking pretty good. Still looking healthy across the board. Nothing has changed. We are still bullish. And don't forget to like the video if you're holding this wrong. If you're still holding this game, hit the like button.